I wouldn't say what I'm about to talk about is that far in the future. That's what's very exciting about it.
Oh, how far are we thinking?
I mean,
From space through to neurotech, through to biotech, like as you said, anything that ultimately helps humans and prepare them into these superhumans, I think I
exactly.
read you say.
Yeah. So every time I design something, whether it's an experience or a physical product or an architecture in an extreme environment, that dynamic between all the sensory experiences of a story is very much part of it.
What kind of things do you think humans would need to do, whether it's like biologically, some kind of like gene therapy, or some kind of like technological enhancement or augmentation in order to prepare? And even that, you were telling me, has an impact on mental health. Would you go to space? This is not something I thought of when it came to space travel.
Yeah.
Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Hyperscale. It's your host, Briar Prestige here, and I've got the wonderful Phnam Bagley here visiting us all the way from France, US. You're a bit of a global jet setter, really, but we are here in our studio in Dubai, and it is an absolute pleasure to have her on the show. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much for the warm welcome. Dubai is always full of wonderful people who know how to be hospitable, always a smile, and always ready for crazy stories. So.
Oh yeah, and Phnam's got some amazing stories to be sharing with us, and we met at the Dubai Future Forum a couple of days ago, didn't we?
Correct. Yeah. From a common friend, Tina Woods, who works a lot on the human exposome.
Who was actually just on my podcast as well.
Yeah, Tina is such a genius, very articulate in how she cares deeply about the environment and how humans can stay healthy and live long, healthy lives. And I met her actually at X Prize, where both of us were working to figure out what big problems we should invest a lot of money in the near future.
And through your company, you've been doing some amazing research and development of products. And I was hearing that if you don't think that a product is going to bring good or really help give back to society, then it's not something you give any airtime to at all.
Zero, yeah.
Tell us about your organization and the kind of things that you've been working on.
Sure. So about 10 years ago, I founded a company called Nonfiction. And I did that with my husband, who's also a designer. And at first, Nonfiction was a typical industrial design firm. And industrial design is the field of designing hardware products. So think of your phone, your laptop, your shoes, your eyewear, your car. All of these things are designed by industrial designers. And so we're, doing our business, and it was fine. And then we started getting to a field called transformative technology. So it's basically technology in support of health, wellness, performance, and longevity. A lot of work in neuroscience, wearables, and being in San Francisco, right next to Silicon Valley, you are exposed to a lot of that because people care and want to invest in it. And so when we realized that we loved working on projects like this, we're like, how do we do more of it? And so after years of working on projects like this, we realized the positive impact that had on people, right? Like when you invest $200-300 in a wearable that collects data or stimulates your brain in a very specific way, and you get all of these beautiful transformations happening on your body and your mental health and the way you relate to others, it really felt good as a designer. And so from there we expanded to other industries like energy. For example, working in East and West Africa, for example, providing reliable, renewable energy in villages. People who, don't necessarily know how to read, certainly don't have a lot of money, and as a standard, only have access to 1 or 2 days of electricity from the grid a month. And so nobody can live or thrive that way. And so we're working with this company called Jazza, which is based in both Halifax, Canada, and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And basically, they came up with the idea of rentable batteries for up to I think $3 or $4 a month that are extremely accessible, extremely reliable, and also employ, a lot of people from these villages. And so this positive impact kind of became a driving force of like what kind of projects we want to attract and what kind of change we want to put in this world. Because I truly believe that being a designer, the designer of the kind that we are, is quite a powerful and responsible job. We could make the decision to create more plastic products to throw away in the world, or we can choose to create positive impact for humans or the environment.
Hi everyone, I'm gonna make this quick so you can get back to enjoying this episode of Hyperscale, but I have a small favor to ask of you. I really need your help in order to take this podcast to the next level, and it all starts with you, our amazing listeners. By hitting the subscribe button, you not only tell the world that you're part of a community of big thinkers who are hungry for knowledge and fascinated by innovation, but you also help us bring even more amazing guests onto the show so that we can shape the future by asking all the right questions.
Wow. And honestly, the work that they've been doing at Nonfiction that I saw has been incredible from across all kinds of industries, from space through to neurotech, through to biotech, like, as you said, anything that ultimately helps humans and prepare them into these superhumans, I think I read you say.
Yeah. And another aspect of positive impact that's also important in the way we practice design at Nonfiction is the business aspect of it. Because I think there's a lot of people out there who have very noble endeavors and goals in life, values, but they're not necessarily, like either putting in the work or invested in enough to transform all of these beautiful ideas into reality. And so the name Nonfiction comes from that. It's like, how do we make all of these great goals a reality? And in order to do that, one, you have to have transparency and clarity on what you're doing, which is, one is positive impact, two is doing hardware. And we also have this love for innovation, everything that's new, exciting, never been done before, that came out of like research labs at universities, that like cutting edge technology. That's like, brings a lot of excitement in the blood of us designers. And then the last thing that's important to us, really, to business, is how do we work with companies or individuals that have a very clear path to execution and success, right? I'm glad that a lot of people have great goals in life, but like, if you don't have the money, the team, and the technology or the R&D in place to make that happen, it's just not going to happen, right? And so yeah, I think as a company, as a consulting firm, having a very clear understanding of like where you want to be and where you don't want to be is extremely important for the success of a company.
Were you into science fiction growing up?
I wouldn't say growing up. I mean,
Yeah.
a little bit like movies, but I think I got in it a little bit later in life. Very interestingly, I was quite a naive child.
In what way?
Very, very unexposed to the world.
Where did you grow up, by the way?
I grew up right outside of Paris in France.
Okay,
So I lived in France for about 22 years, the first 22 years of my life. And I lived in Denmark for a little bit less than a year, and I moved to the US 20 years ago. And so sci-fi to me, especially in movies, because I have developed an eye for beautiful cinematography and how the visual, the dynamic, the sound quality of effects, as well as the score of a movie work together. And I think the emotional side of science fiction is something that I resonate very much with. So every time I design something, whether it's an experience or a physical product or an architecture in an extreme environment, that dynamic between all the sensory experiences of a story is very much part of it.
What are some of the most favorite projects that you've been working on recently that you could tell us about?
Oh, wow.
She's like, how do I pick?
I mean, honestly, and that's kind of like a testament to how much I love my job, right? Like, and the privilege of being able to work on this insane projects
Yeah.
that we get to be part of. I mean, just to give you a taste of what we're working on, and some of it is on our website and some of it is not, is we're working on a brain implant system that helps people who are suffering from treatment-resistant depression.
Oh, wow.
So these are people who...
Are these non-invasive or invasive?
So it's not, it is invasive.
Yeah.
So, but it's basically a brain implant that sits in the thickness of the skull. So it's a
Okay.
30-minute in and out outpatient system. And then we designed this hat and this controller that powers the brain implant. And so it stimulates the brain in a very specific way, in a very specific spot. And it basically makes the technology that for years has been available in the hospital, but make it available outside, like in the comfort of your home and as you walk outside. Because what's very interesting in the realm of medical technology right now is how do we make everything more practical? Because when you suffer from treatment-resistant depression, which is depression that does not react to talk therapy or medication or anything else, people are at the end of the road, basically, a lot of suicidal thoughts and attempts. It's very hard to ask them to come to the hospital for like 5 straight days and sit in a chair for 8 hours and underneath a machine, right? So that's asking a lot, and a lot of the patients might drop the care that might actually save their lives. So working with companies like this, like Motif Neurotech, which actually stemmed out of Rice University in Houston, we were able to develop this incredible, simple to use product ecosystem that that really is changing lives, right? And we're still in development. One thing
What
that's...
kind of like impact have you seen? Like, so these people have gone from, very severe clinical depression, as you say. I imagine they're really probably struggling to get out of bed, even in some instances. Like, what kind of impact does this have had on their lives?
So this project is actually still under clinical trial,
Yeah.
but the type of results that we're seeing is life-saving. People who literally think of a suicide every day have their thoughts and their lifestyle change over 5 days.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the maintenance is just a mere 20 minutes of stimulation a month.
So they like turn it on and it might...
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's
And it's
kind of
under the skull, so it's not visible, or...
It's not visible. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the thickness of the skull, and literally it's 30 minutes in and out of the hospital. And then you close it. You can keep your hair. You don't even have to shave it. And so that was very important, like really thinking about like how many steps do patients have to go through? Are they willing to go through this? And how does it impact their dignity? And how do we encourage them to take the first step so they can, be okay with the rest of the process of healing? Another aspect that was very important in this program as well was making sure that nothing that we designed screamed, I have a mental illness, right? Because if we design, medical devices like this that, have weird shapes or like obnoxiously big, and like people would stay home or not want to go outside, and that might be a problem. Another aspect that I found really, really powerful when I worked on this project with my team is the advisory board, lived experience advisory board of Motif Neurotech. So they're all made of people who actually suffer from treatment-resistant depression. So every time we had a new design review, which happens every time the board meets, they were bluntly honest with us, like this will work, this will not work. Because as designers, we always start with assumptions. We assume that people want this. We assume that they'll be okay if it's this big, this heavy, this color. But until you talk to the people it's designed for, and these people are brutally honest about what is going to work for them and what is not, even like these small details, that's really what's the difference between a good and a great product, is how much you listen to the people you design for.
Wow. What other projects have you been working on?
So I mentioned earlier the JAZA project, which is African renewable energy. What can I talk about? So we worked a couple years ago with a company called STEM Science, and we developed a product with them called Somni. And so basically, it's professors in psychology and neuroscience at UC Berkeley in California who have discovered that if you stimulate your prefrontal cortex with electricity, non-invasively, 15 minutes before bed, you can actually tell your brain how to fall asleep and how to stay asleep all night.
Wow,
Yes, which is,
I did see some people using this, and then they were like,
yeah. And sometimes you're exposed to technologies like this, like sounds too real to be true, right?
Yeah.
Because if you Google, I can't sleep, what do I do? You always see the same 20 types of advice, like
count
close your
sheep.
like buy an expensive mattress and fancy sheets and close your shades, make sure there's no noise, like buy this expensive like heavy blanket or whatever it is, right? But all of these might make your sleeping environment more comfortable, but from a neurological standpoint, they do not fix sleep. And so that's the revolution of this product, is that it actually fixes sleep. It fixes.
How does it fix it?
So it's a band that you put on your forehead, and it has stimulators and readers, electroencephalographic readers. So basically, the stimulators apply just a little tingle of electricity to your brain. And so the brain has different levels of brain waves, alpha, beta, theta, etc. And then the electricity basically tells the brain, hey, you should follow this pattern. And so the brain follows this pattern, and this pattern for this 15 minutes is basically forces your brain to go into a state of drowsiness, which is when your eyelids are starting to get heavy and you're preparing your body and your brain to go to sleep. And the magical thing about this technology is that you don't have to simulate your brain the whole night, which can be uncomfortable if you're the kind of person who cannot sleep with anything on their forehead. So what it does is I stimulate for 15 minutes, and then the brain, once it ends those 15 minutes, knows what to do the rest of the night. So a healthy sleep pattern is in 4 phases. We'll call them N1, N2, N3, and deep sleep. And a healthy cycle of sleep is going through these 4 phases 4 to 5 times a night. And usually after that, your body is refreshed and you wake up, ready to take on the day. The best way to know if you are well rested from the night before is if, I think around 9 or 10 a.m., if you feel that your focus is at its optimal state, that's when you're well rested. Yeah.
It's amazing how important sleep is.
Oh, it's everything.
Like, it's everything, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm at an age, I'm in my mid-40s now, where if I don't sleep, I see it on my face, right? It's a mix of sleep and hydration and making sure diet is fine, and if I'm moving my body, and and it's not only the vanity of it, it's also a mirror of what's going on the inside.
Yes. And you talk about creating these superhumans, and obviously we are going through a period of exponential change. In this world. Like, there is a possibility in the future that we may be living on space.
Yes.
For instance. Like, what ultimately do we need to do to prepare, like physically, psychologically, spiritually, all of the lees?
Yeah.
You've been doing some work in preparing humans for space travel.
Yeah, and that's actually informed a lot by the work we're doing on Earth. So one thing that's very exciting about the work that we do is really that bridge between those two worlds, because there's a lot more opportunities and projects obviously on Earth, because markets are much bigger. When you design for space, you're designing for 1 to 6 people.
Yes, yeah.
So and also the constraints are quite different, right? But all the work that we've done in medical technology or neurotechnology or biotechnology really informs us on like how the body functions, and really collecting that data or feeding back that data into the body with ultra customized stimulation is something that we're starting to transition into space. So we're doing that, as I just talked about, we're doing that with sleep, which is essential to health and recovery. I think we've designed like 4 or 5 sleep products so far. Like we're becoming a little bit experts in that. We worked in mental health, like I mentioned with the brain implant. We're working in physical performance. That was with a company called Herald Neuroscience, where we designed this device that simulates the primary motor cortex, which happens to be on top of your head. And that was specifically designed for athletes. And turns out anybody who moves their body, even parts of their body in a very specific way, like musicians or dancers, get benefit from this kind of technology. And another thing that's very important about the technology, most of the technology I'm talking about, is that it's attainable, right? A lot of these technology that come out R&D, like athletes at the Olympics might spend $10,000, $100,000 on them without blinking an eye, because that's the difference between a gold medal and a silver medal, right? Unless you're like a Phelps or like one of those like exceptional athletes. Honestly, the difference between a gold and silver medal is technology. It's not talent. Because everybody at that point is so on top of their game that the difference is like 100th of a second. And so all of these aspects of life and how they support performance and longevity and health and wellness and awareness of one's health and how our health evolves over time, because we're not the same people at 45 or 60 or 12 years old. And and technology and data collection allows us to see the differences and adapt accordingly. And so all of this information that has been collected with the work that we've done on Earth really informs how to best design for astronauts, because living in space is so incredibly bizarre, right? Like the fact that we as humans have evolved over millions of years with Earth's gravity, and then all of a sudden you take it out, is traumatizing. It's traumatizing to our physiology, it's traumatizing to our mental health, to our social health, to all the familiarity of it, right?
What kind of things does it do?
So when you are on orbit, for example, when you're on the International Space Station, the reason why you float is because you're essentially falling constantly. Orbiting the Earth means falling around the Earth. And so I don't know if you've ever like jumped out of an airplane, but imagine doing this for like 6 months.
Wow. Yeah.
So
is
that's
that actually what it feels like when you're in space?
It feels a little different, but just to give you an idea of like how traumatizing it is, pretty much every astronaut that goes up there gets sick for like about 3 days. Like it's like puke fest, right?
Oh, wow. So they're vomiting and...
Yeah, it's a lot of vomiting. And as a space architect, which is a specialty that I work in, I have to anticipate a lot of that. Like when we design venting systems, because the air is recycled all the time, we need to make sure that, if, not to sound disgusting here, but
It's
like
right.
when vomits get stuck in
it.
there, we need to be able to wipe it off, right? Things like that. So there's that going on. Also, when you look at pictures of astronauts in space, you realize that their face is very blown up and they have very skinny legs.
Oh,
and the reason for that is because when you are standing on Earth, the bottom half of your body has more blood because gravity, right? It's attracting it towards the center of the planet. When you're up in space, everything is even.
Oh no.
Right? So
I forever try and have like a nice, like skinny face. And this is not something I thought of when it came to space travel.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There are certain things as well that can be quite dangerous. For example, you can experience space blindness. When your optical nervous system is a little bit traumatized, or there's too much blood in the head, it can lead to that. Fun fact.
Is that like an actual, is that permanent, the space blindness?
It hasn't been permanent so far,
Okay.
but it can be quite debilitating and uncomfortable, right?
Mm.
So there's a fun fact. So if you can do this at home, if you stand up and you measure yourself, measure your height, and then you lie down and you measure your height, they're 2 different heights. There's about like an inch or 2 difference, because what's happening is when you stand, your spine is compressing. And when you lie down on the ground, it's relaxed. So it takes more space. So when you're up in space, it's more similar to while you're lying down. So as you're moving around, as you're living your life and doing all your work in space, your spine is not compressed, and it's not experiencing the normal amount of stress that it takes for you to walk. And so that can actually have long-term negative effects on the body, especially if you're going to stay in space longer than 6 months, which happens every once in a while. So physiologically, a lot of things are quite difficult. And now, if you want to talk about beyond low Earth orbit, we can talk about Mars. Right? Mars is going to be, there's a lot of unknown, actually, the moon and Mars both, because they have partial gravity. So the moon has about 1/6 of the Earth's gravity, meaning that, your mass on the surface is 1/6 of what it is here on Earth. And so that's why when you see videos of Apollo astronauts on the surface of the moon, they're bouncing at much higher heights. And that actually has implication on architecture. If you design architecture for the surface of the moon, the ceilings have to be higher.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Interesting.
So on Mars is 1/3. And obviously humans have never been there yet. So there's a lot of unknowns. We haven't stayed on the moon long enough to know if partial gravity is even better than microgravity, which is when you float. And so I'm very, very excited about the next few decades, where we're going back to the moon permanently, creating a base there. And we're going to Mars, which not only is like very, very far away, but also has a lot of unknown, right? The only things we send to Mars are, a handful of rovers and, a couple probes that orbit it. So really understanding the health and wellness implication of all this from a physiological standpoint, from a mental health standpoint, from a social health standpoint, is going to be so important. And I didn't even talk about stress or isolation, being away from your family for 3 years at a time. It's all a lot.
Yeah. I remember when we had a conversation at the Dubai Future Forum a couple of days ago, you were even pointing out, and this was something I had not thought about at all, but the colors of Earth.
Yeah.
We've gotten so used to this vibrant, colorful Earth as humans, and then to go stay on Mars or the moon, like obviously it's very dusty and bland.
Yeah.
And even that, you were telling me, has an impact on mental health.
Yeah. So colors from the environment you're talking about, the moon is basically grayscale, it's dark gray or light gray. There's no atmosphere, which means that the sky is black, right? There's no sunsets and sunrises. On Mars, everything is very orange because the regolith, which is like the rocky, powdery part of the surface, is very rich in iron. The atmosphere is very thin on Mars, and the sunsets on Mars are blue.
Oh, interesting.
So we don't know what that's going to do to our circadian rhythm, which is our biological mechanism that tells us that this is the morning versus this is the evening, and helps us regulate our hormones in a way that
Yes, very
supports.
important. Yes.
So we don't know a lot about those things, but there's another aspect of color that's very interesting as well, besides the circadian rhythm and the time of the day. So there's a field called neuroaesthetics. So neuroaesthetics is basically the study of how the physical environment around you, like the shape of things, the color of things, the energy of things, is interpreted by the brain, and how the brain then turns that into healthy or unhealthy states of being. And so it's very interesting to study that and to apply certain principles to design. If I enter a room that is well designed and the light is like very hugging, and it feels like home. It smells like home. It feels like a relaxing morning on a Sunday or something like that. Your brain and your entire body will react to that. If I enter another room where everything is like very aggressive and dark and unwelcoming and all that, like your body will also do the same. So so the same way we design, space habitats, whether it's like lunar or Martian surface habitats or orbital habitats like a space station, it's important to think about those things. What kind of colors, what kind of shapes, what kind of environments, what kind of technology, what kind of interactions we're going to integrate into all of this. And I think there's a lot of like low-hanging fruits we can look into. Like, for example, when you live in microgravity, you have to work out at least 2 hours a day in order to keep your...
Well, that's quite a bit, isn't it?
It's quite a bit.
Yes.
You have to keep your bone mass and your muscle mass at optimal level because it's just, deteriorating over time very, very quickly, actually. I talked to an astronaut one day and he said that he was feeling a little cocky and he says, oh, I don't need to work out. He didn't work out for like 3 weeks. He went to space, I want to say 20 years ago. And he told me that he still feels the consequences of not working out during those weeks.
How does he feel?
Like there are certain aspects of his like bone density and muscle, recovery that is just not optimal anymore.
Goodness. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Would you go to space?
So it's funny, I get asked this question a lot.
I'm sure you do.
So the answer is quite interesting. I think I have to like come back to childhood because a lot of people think I got into the space industry because I dreamt of being an astronaut as a kid. I actually didn't. I saw a lot of the space shuttle era, videos of launches of astronauts like heroically, walking onto a station and then living and working there. And I thought the environment in which they live was terrible. Right. I'm like, why are you paying these people to like risk their lives and doing all these experiments in an environment that with like very harsh light, like no personal space. Apparently it smells terrible. And they have to stay up there isolated from the rest of humanity for like 6 months at a time. It's pretty terrible. So I got into the space industry out of frustration. I'm like, this could be much, much better. And so to answer your question, I would go to space if I'm given the opportunity to fix the environments in which astronauts live in real time, right? And so that's something that I actually did in a much smaller scale when I went on what's called an analog astronaut mission. So this summer, I had a crew of 4 people. I was a commanding officer of a crew of 4 people that flew to a very remote island called Devon Island. And I believe Devon Island is about 800 miles away from the North Pole. It's the largest uninhabited island on this planet. And the 4 of us were the only humans on that entire island. So we were dropped there at a research station called the Flashline Mars Arctic Research Station, and or FMARS, and we were trained to go there to take care of like power systems and water systems. We were completely independent from the rest of the Earth, really. Even our communication system was modified, right? Like there's because of the distance. So basically we're trying to simulate how it is to live on Mars. And the reason why Devon Island is chosen is because there's a massive crater there. I can't remember the diameter. I think it's 24 kilometers in diameter crater that made the geology, the surface geology of Devon Island very similar to the surface of Mars. So anyway, all 4 of us go there with our equipment. And the research that I wanted to do personally was to bring a suitcase of equipment and then change the environment to make it infinitely more comfortable than it was before. I very distinctly remember when I arrived at the research station. We opened the doors, kind of like stuffy in there, and realized that there was like stuff everywhere, very much like a space station, because the station itself has been there for about 25 years. Every summer is used by like different crews. And I remember distinctly like the interior was white and there was stuff everywhere. It was like sort of organized, but not in a way that was conducive to productivity or anything inspiring, at least to me as a designer. And so I immediately opened my suitcase. I'm like, we need to fix this. So I started
You're like Mary Poppins.
pretty much, yeah. Except my bag was like not as deep. But really changing the colors, and really, I insisted on cooking all the meals, because food to me, is not only sustenance. Food is also pleasure, is culture, is, where do the spices come from, where does what kind of like childhood memory does each dish bring up to you. And so I had asked my crew before, what their favorite dishes were, what kind of spices they like. So I made sure that in the menu that was presented to them during our mission, they had this kind of comfort presented to them.
So what kind of things did you put up and change?
So there was the food. There were some lights. So I had like this series of light. There were candle lights. There were like electric candle lights that really created this like evening, very like sensual type of lighting, completely the opposite of what was there before. Surprisingly, very low hanging fruit, like putting lights in the bathroom was just not a thing, because we turn off the electricity most of the day to like conserve it. And so I'm like, hey, we could just use like battery operated like candle lights a little bit everywhere to create that. I also had like colored lights. I had purchased this like very specific colored light projector that helped simulate morning lights and evening lights, just to like inform our circadian rhythm that this is when you should relax, and this is when you should get a little bit more excited about what's up in the day. So we had the lights. We also had sounds. So I brought like a pretty nice speaker, like a pretty compact one, that I hung on one of the walls of the main common area. And I started playing very specific music with very specific frequencies. There are certain frequencies that calm you down. There's certain frequencies that help you focus throughout the day. And so I was playing, off of Spotify, like different playlists of specific frequencies, and people really, really enjoy those. I didn't tell them that I was doing that. I was just like playing in the background. And then I remember distinctly, some of the crew members saying, "Oh, I feel so relaxed right now." Like candlelights and this little sound in the background. I'm like, yeah, this is all by design.
Yes, interesting.
Right? Yeah. And then also, the tactile, my suitcase was very small, very much like space. You can't like bring like massive amounts of weight and volume. So I brought these like beautifully soft blankets and like faux furs, and I would put them on the walls. I also added some fake plants. So back to the idea of colors, we are used to being surrounded by plants, by different manifestation of nature. And when you're in a research station, besides what's going on the outside, everything is quite artificial. And so bringing a little bit of nature in that environment really supports people's mental health on a daily basis, even though you might not know that you need it. But once you take that away, people start missing it.
Do you think that in the future we are going to be like space-faring creatures?
Yes, I mean that's one of the many ambitions that we have. I think by nature humanity is quite explorative and very ambitious, and it's very hard to think that we will stop exploring. I think every generation of humans ever is made of 95+% people who think that the way we live is fine. Right? But I would like to remind everyone that a mere 100 years ago, flying the sky was brand new, right?
It's true.
And now, if in, let's say, 1925, I told you, hey, you know what? In 100 years from now, people from all over the world are going to fly to Dubai. They're going to go into this futurist, like conference, and they're going to talk about, going to space. I mean, you'd probably be locked up, right? And that was just 100 years ago. And now we're always all very aware that technology innovation is accelerating by the minute, with AI and with biotechnology and all of that, that it's very, very difficult to anticipate what's going to happen in the next 10, 20, 30 years. We can probably do it for 2 to 5 years, but who knows what's going to come up and really enrich everybody's relationship with innovation.
So thinking far into the future and preparing for this space travel, becoming spacefaring creatures, like what kind of things do you think humans would need to do, whether it's like biologically, some kind of like gene therapy, or maybe even some kind of like technological enhancement or augmentation in order to prepare for
Yeah.
this kind of future?
And I wouldn't say what I'm about to talk about is that far in the future. That's what's very exciting about it.
Oh,
There's,
how far are we thinking?
I mean, 10 years, 20 at
Wow.
most, which is going to be like pretty incredible. So 3D printing organs. So we know that there's a huge shortage of organs, hearts and livers and kidneys on this earth, and it's killing many, many people. And here we're just talking about people who even know that that's an option, right? And so being able to create factories for organs that not only help your body function, but also match your genetics, so you don't reject it, is really on the horizon right now, which is pretty incredible.
Which would be amazing for
Right?
all of these people who are on these waiting lists for many years.
Yeah. And what's very interesting about the idea of 3D printing in space specifically is because because of microgravity, you don't have to 3D print living cells with scaffolds, for example. And so, because if you cut those scaffolds, you might kill the tissue. And so in space, you just like 3D print wherever it is, which is like a very, very interesting way of thinking about, the future, how we manufacture things. And also, if we're thinking about the far future, when we go to Mars or when we do intergalactic travel for like multiple generations, for example, one thing is our organs evolved to work with Earth's gravity. So the heart has its shape because it works with Earth's gravity, and you can have that many, healthy heartbeats in a lifetime. But in space, because the pressure needs to be like quite even everywhere, which is why most space habitats are either cylindrical or spherical. It's the same principle for organs. If you want to fill the heart with blood and then pump it in a way that's like more efficient, the heart might have to be redesigned to be a little bit rounder. Yeah.
Interesting.
So, and perhaps we can do the same thing with other organs that might be too stressed to function normally when you're living in space. So really thinking about things like that. Another thing that's a little bit closer to the present, even though it sounds like complete science fiction, is the generating custom proteins. So a lot of pharmaceuticals that are very customized to people's needs are proteins. The problem with proteins when they are fabricated on Earth with Earth's gravity is that they might twist the wrong way. If there's one thing you need to know about proteins, is if they twist the wrong way, like a mirrored protein, they can actually be extremely dangerous. And so in order to almost guarantee the quality of the protein that comes out of these machines, we might have protein factories, or customized pharmaceuticals in space. And yeah, I think there's quite a few companies that are working on that right now. The research is becoming like more and more accessible to reality. There's a lot of like work done in stem cells in space as well, for the same reason as proteins, like creating them and maintaining them, keeping them alive seems to be possible in space. And there's a lot of opportunities in creating new pharmaceuticals this way, like Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles, actually specifically working on that. So yeah, lots of pretty incredible things. And if we're talking about the outside, right, like there are companies that are doing humanoid robotics. Perhaps you can replace a limb, or replace a spine, or replace, part of your bodies to essentially optimize your body while retaining your nervous system in a way that makes you more powerful, stronger, and be able to live longer.
It's interesting to think that we almost might end up with these like subspecies of
Yeah.
humans based on the augmentations
Yeah.
or biological changes that we might choose.
Yeah. I mean, in many ways, we're already doing this, right? Like this, let's be real, there's not much natural going on with us because of the food that we eat, because of the medication that we take. We live a lot longer than, let's say 100 years ago. And so that's in many ways modification, whether it's genetic or epigenetic or in any other way. We also have a lot more understanding of how the body works and optimize, workout routines to help, with longevity and all that. And we also have an understanding of genetics, right? There's certain genes that may say, hey, you are more prone to Alzheimer's. Perhaps there's something you can do in your early age that can prevent that from happening too early. So all of this knowledge and innovation in medicine, as well as biotechnology and all that, informs us on all the different ways humans can not only survive, but also thrive in an environment that's literally designed to kill them.
Yeah. And what kind of other things do you think we could be doing as humans in order to create these, like this superhuman strength, resilience, like the most optimal human species we could possibly be?
So your question really reminds me of a science fiction movie called Gattaca. I don't know if you remember. I think it was like the late 90s.
No, I haven't seen it.
With Ethan Hawke and what's her name? Uma Thurman.
Great actress.
Yeah, fantastic. And so basically, it's a future in which humans are engineered to be perfect, perfectly beautiful.
Oh, I think I have seen this
Yeah,
actually. Yes.
yeah, perfectly athletic, and a society at peace and all that. And so it's like pushing away people who are normal, genetically, just coming out the way they were. And it's very interesting because you see this like beautiful land of beautiful people, and there's like a coldness to it. And I think what's beautiful about humanity is the fact that we come in all different sizes and shapes and personalities and backgrounds and cultures and all those things, right? And so I'm less inclined to see a kind of like homogenic future culture of humans as a positive thing. And so from a philosophical standpoint and from a societal standpoint, I think it's important to, instead of homogenizing everybody, to create technology to adapt to each and every one of us, right? If I am short and I have a heart condition, and if I have a missing limb, I too should be able to go to space. And that space architecture and the technology that surrounds me should adapt to me instead of me adapting to it. And so that's kind of like a fundamental kind of like guideline as to how we should design the future. And I'm not only talking about space here, I'm really talking about how we design this Earth, right? For a long time, we have designed for the mass. We have designed for the elites in space, right? People that we train to survive. But I think thinking about a future of space where any single person, from someone with disability to an elderly person to a child, maybe babies, right, can go to space, stay healthy, and thrive up there. That's the biggest challenge. And I think that's very, very exciting.
And we obviously speak about, well, you speak a lot about creating impact in this world. How can we ultimately, with all of this diversity that you very rightly point out that we have, how can we be creating impact in a world that essentially we all thrive in?
I think impact can be global and impact can be individual as well. I think this awareness and understanding of what is health, what is not, how my health is impacting the relationships that I have with the people around me, whether it's family, significant others, friendships, work colleagues. Really, that the fact that we're not just, ego bodies walking around and, waiting to die. We're a lot more complex than that. And I think it's important to create that awareness and to create technology to help us be more aware. And sometimes it's technology and sometimes it's other things, right? Like meditation, for example, costs nothing, right? It's a practice that's like incredibly difficult to get into, but once you start seeing the benefits of it, how it calms your nervous system and how it builds a sense of compassion with yourself and with others. All of these changes in your body turn you into someone who's wiser and more patient with the rest of the world, right? And I think, we talk a lot about, world peace and all those things, and they're not going to happen just because someone says so. They're going to happen because we are aware of the consequences of not doing it, right? And so that's why I very much care about impact, because I truly believe that on an individual level and a collective level, we're all aware of it. We're all capable of it, right? It's kind of hard to see it in this day and age because there's so much cynicism going on, right? With social media, with the language changing, with people's opinion being anonymous online. It's very, very difficult for people to discern what they need and what they want out of this life, and how it's being perceived by people who only react to the negative stuff.
Yeah, hugely with you there on that. It's crazy sometimes. I think you get in the social media bubble, right? And you just see almost the negativity maybe, and lose track of all the other different nuances and good and stuff like this about the world.
Yeah. And I don't see anything as good or bad, as 100%, right? I think we live in a world where everything is just grayscale. And I think people's mindsets is what determines whether it's going to be more on the dark side or the light side, right? Are you building a level of resilience that is high enough that when you receive all of that negative energy coming from the outside, are you reacting, or are you absorbing and then giving it back to the world, right? And really evolving from a reactive society to a society that is aware, that is kind, that knows how science works, and respects the long-term effect of the technology that we introduce into our lives. That's so incredibly important. And as technology goes along so quickly, it's very easy to lose grasp of this. I work in high technology, and sometimes I'm like, whoa, this is going a little bit too fast, right? Like the world is requiring a lot of us. We need to know a lot of things and use more tools and be aware of this and that and international everything. I cannot imagine how hard it is for the elderly, right?
Yes.
Who grew up with basically no technology, all of a sudden it's this technological era, and now their brain, for absolutely natural reasons, cannot keep up. And that's going to be us in the future, right? Like the young generation today is technology is second nature to them. So they're going to evolve a little bit differently. But that's kind of like the nature of generational change, right? I'm very excited about the next generation, right? There's a lot of things they do that don't make any sense to me today, but I know that in the end.
Like what in particular?
I mean, the fact that, just coming back to social media, this obsession with technology and with this weird inability to connect emotionally with another person if there's no filter of technology. It's just bizarre to me, right? I grew up, or my formative years, teenage years and early 20s, was done very analogically, right? If I wanted to meet someone, I met them in person. If I wanted to know someone, I asked questions. I didn't go on Google and start spying on them. Now it's completely normal, right, to behave that way. There's nothing wrong with it. But maybe I'm putting my old person cap on, but I find that very, very harmful in many ways.
I wonder if we're going to start to see a bit more of a shift where we actually start to go back to some of that more sort of in-person and community, especially since we've realized now about how important it is for longevity and our health and wellness.
Yeah. And I mean, there's been a lot of studies, for example, in multi-generational exposure and how it relates to longevity, right? Like the cognitive exposure, the cognitive health maintenance of grandparents being surrounded by children, for example, the grandparents, develop a sense of compassion towards this, more helpless human being that's growing up and really developing this like heart towards that fact of their life. And and also like being an adult has changed a lot over time. So being an adult in the 1950s, you had the responsibility of the home, the responsibility of work, and all those long hours and this and that. And now people have hobbies and they have time to dedicate to discovering their life purpose, and they really dedicate time to nurture their children, which is something that's like relatively new in the history of humans, right? And we tend to forget all those things, right? We think that nurturing your own children is like something people have been doing forever. Like, no, in the 1920s, people used to put their kids to work at 7, and that was completely normal, right? And so understanding history, respecting the slow evolution of how humans have treated each other, and how fortunate we are to have the life that we have today. Yes. And also understanding what's wrong with today. And instead of being cynical about it, do something about it. Do you have knowledge in technology? Do you have knowledge in science? Do you have knowledge in psychology and anthropology and politics and whatever, in order to make things a little bit better for you and a little bit better for your neighbor?
I love that. Yeah, I really do love that. Atlas. Have you been following Atlas in the world and all of the talk about the comet? And do you think that it does mean anything different? Or what do you think it actually is? What's your thoughts as someone who's in the space architecture space?
I mean, it's just like an extra, what's the word? It's just an object from the outside the solar system that comes in and out, right? It just has a funny shape. I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theory going on. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, until we have more knowledge on like where it came from, why it has this shape, and so on. I mean, I'm not the kind of person who has like opinions about those things. But yeah, it's good to know that it exists, right? I mean, not to be like all like conspiracy theory, but if you ask a lot of people who work in like more secret service, they'll tell you, yeah, there's certain things in the solar system and beyond the solar system we cannot explain, right? And I think Atlas is one of those things. And I don't want to jump to conclusions just because we saw a tiny image of it, moving through the solar system. That's like, I'm not qualified to say anything about it.
Regarding the space mission that went up with the likes of Katy Perry and lots of other women who were in it, do you feel that it inspired a lot of young girls and people who perhaps hadn't been interested in STEM before to perhaps be an astronaut one day? Or do you feel like it achieved what the overall mission was meant to achieve?
I think it had the potential of doing better, and it did some, right? I'm sure there's definitely girls around the world who, didn't think that a women-only mission would happen like this. And to be fair, this is like a very short mission. It's not like they spent months up in space. It's just a matter of minutes. But it's the beginning of something. One thing I would like to point out is that it was I kind of feel bad for Katy Perry because she had a dream of going to space, and now everybody
everyone bagged on it.
Yeah, I mean it's quite unfair, right? And also unfair to the other women who were on that mission, because some of them worked like quite hard to earn that seat, right? And I really blame a lot of the messaging, the marketing, PR, and all that. They could have been much kinder. Much more understanding of someone's dream, and talk less about how this is just about sexy women with like curves and very tight flight suits going up in space for like 3 minutes. It's not helping anyone.
Do you think it maybe says something about like the media or like society at large? Is that here we have this almost like opportunity, and we have these, powerhouse women in their own rights going up, and then we can't help but be negative about it in terms of the media.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a reason why they did this to a group of women, because people have been going on those short missions for a few years now. It happened before, it happened since, right? But that one was particularly targeted, and the elephant in the room is misogyny, That's like straight up display of misogyny, not only coming from the media that portrayed it in a very certain way, but specifically coming from the people who just absorbed that message and just flew with it. I mean, I gave a talk in Paris, I think 2 weeks after it happened, that flight happened, and I was giving a talk about luxury and aerospace and all that, and half of the students in the room couldn't stop talking about Katy Perry, and I'm like, and I just stopped them. I'm like, do you realize that was her dream? Do you realize that she worked very hard to earn that dream? Like, this is not something that, you just like purchase, right? Like you kind of have to like sort of qualify for it, and making sure that there's alignment with what Blue Origin is trying to do. And yeah, they try to do something symbolic with sending women together, women only crew together. Could it have been done better? Sure. But you can't blame women for being women and having dreams, because that is just completely unfair, right? If it was a group of dudes, or a group of like mixed men and women, or older people, or just like youngsters, I guarantee you nobody would have been so cruel as they were with women.
Do you think there's anything we can be doing to encourage like young females to get more into STEM? Because quite often it is still such a male-dominated arena, this whole technology space. Have you found that? Or are you seeing a lot more women at the top these days?
Yeah, and younger and younger women, and women from like many different regions of the world. Like I remember going to Saudi Arabia like 2 or 3 years ago, and seeing all these young girls, 13 to 16, in abaya, like all together, asking questions. They spoke like perfect English. I was so shocked. And just asking this like such pertinent questions that level curiosity, that glimmer in their eye, and just wanting to be part of it. There was no question in their mind that they had to be part of it. And I love that, because there was like no amount of cynicism in the way they saw the world. Whereas, in perhaps other parts of the world, United States where I live, there's so many people there, so the range of people is like can be quite large. But where dreaming of being a scientist, or mathematician, or anybody working in STEM, and let alone working in space, seems out of reach for a lot of them, right? Or the scientific or space environment is not conducive to them kind of like flourishing. So it can be quite difficult. I don't know if you ever heard of what's called the Scully effect.
No, I haven't.
So in the 1990s, there was a show, very popular show called The X-Files, with David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, and she played. They played this like very interesting duo. So he was the alien searching, loving FBI agent, and she was the pragmatic. I think she was a scientist or researcher and they were both FBI agents, and she had this stance about her. She was serious, but also she was kind and compassionate, and she had a way of like interviewing people, of like showing professionalism and understanding science and being curious and all those things, like great qualities. And there has been studies, I can't remember the numbers, but there has been studies that said that young girls who saw the X-Files and saw Scully acting like this, the rate of women who ended up in cars in STEM like shot up.
Amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's really a testament to representation. Because not everybody functions like this. Actually, I'm the kind of person who doesn't function like this. Like, I don't need representation to have the dream, but a lot of people do, right? That means that if I'm a Black woman and I see a Black woman in space, I will, like Mae Jemison was the first Black woman in space. Signe Proctor, I had breakfast with her this morning, is the first Black mission pilot of a space mission for Inspiration 4. They are, the North Star. They are the people that, tell me I could be that person. Until then, it's very difficult, I think, for the average person to have the imagination to say, I could do it. I could be the first, right? There are certain people who have the personality to be the first and certain people who don't. And there's nothing wrong with being one or the other. But that's why representation matters.
Is there anything else that you want people who are listening to this podcast to maybe take away in regards to, the kind of impact that they could make on the world, or some interesting piece of tech that's happening that maybe we aren't quite aware of?
I think it's really coming back to something quite simple. In order to change the world, you probably have to change yourself first, right? And to change yourself, you have to understand where you are, right? I'm very glad that there are certain people, including my husband. It's funny, very funny. My husband is the kind of person who's content. Like, it doesn't matter if like there's a flood, or he's on a beach and having a good time with friends or whatever. He's always content. So and part of me is extremely jealous, whereas my personality is like, we can always do more, right? And that's probably why we work very well together. There's like this balance. And so having that curiosity about yourself, working on figuring out what your life purpose is, and also understanding that your life purpose might change in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, right?
Yes.
Surrounding yourself with people you admire. They don't need to have, fancy degrees or be rich or anything like that. I think those are like very superfluous, but like people you trust, friendships of quality, people you look up to because they're doing something that show courage. I think these are great places to start, because they're going to build a foundation that is strong enough for you to believe that this crazy idea you're going to have in your 30s can become reality.
I think we all need that bit of delusion a little bit, right?
Oh, yeah.
When it comes, because if we're not going to believe in ourselves, then who the hell is going to believe in us?
So I'm going to tell you a very, very interesting story. So I was in Bali, and I was talking to this executive coach, right? She's someone who gets paid, pretty healthy money by C-level people to basically tell them that they're going to be okay, right? These are the tools that will make you believe and feel that you're going to be okay. And at one point, I think she traveled to, I believe, Uganda, and she met this boy who was, I think, 18, 19, smile ear to ear. And then she started like talking to him and learning about his past, right? Child soldier, violence, drugs, all those things, but now was out of this kind of life. And again, like just beaming of like hope and beauty about the future. And she looked at him and asked him, so what is your secret? Like, why do you have such a beautiful outcome, outlook on life? And apparently this boy looked at her again with his big smile and say, that's because I believe in myself. And so when she came back to Canada to talk to her CEOs again, and then, all these people who are on paper successful in every way, went to the fancy school, had the fancy jobs and had the fancy paycheck, but were miserable on the inside. She had this like gut reaction. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like, when she's like, you don't understand. There's so many people in this world that have gone through like much worse things than you, and were able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And you can't even, wake up in the morning and feeling grateful about what you have. So that's really a testament to the power of believing in yourself, right? And I find that so incredibly powerful and beautiful.
I think that's such a nice place to end. What an amazing message, and it's been fascinating listening to you today. Actually, I could talk for another 3 hours or something. I'm sure we would always find some cool things to talk about. But the work that you've been doing is fascinating, and may you always be doing all of these cool, exciting things, because there is so much, I think, that we can be doing in today's world, isn't there? And so much opportunity and potential and everything. So thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And shout out to the team and to the wonderful questions. There's definitely a lot of curiosity and openness about your questions, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very curious about you, so it was very easy. Amazing. That was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.